on YouTube. My mom is pretty cool. I can confirm. She's a pretty cool lady. All right, cool. So we're live on YouTube. Welcome, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about managing depression through vagus nerve stimulation. But first, we're going to do our famous simultaneous squeeze. Boom. All right, so simultaneous squeeze gets us in the mood for learning. This is the best time of the day to learn new subjects. You guys are going to become geniuses of the vagus nerve. So ready? We're going to do a simultaneous squeeze where we take a deep breath in, take another sip of air at the top, an Andrew Huberman sip. Then we're going to hold that in. You can hold your nose if you need to, but you're going to squeeze that air in and then for 5 seconds and then exhale for 5 seconds. Super easy. So ready in 3, 2, 1, breathe in. Sip of air at the top. Hold and squeeze. And slowly exhale. Very good. Okay. So super stoked about today's video. Let me just timestamp as well so people know where to start. So in terms of the main drive of today's subject, we're going to be talking about depression and how much of a debilitating mental health concern it can really be and how it affects many multiples of millions of people every single year around the world. So it's not just a US problem, it's a worldwide problem. It's a human problem, truly. Now, while there are various treatments available for depression, one potential method that is gaining attention more and more is vagus nerve stimulation, VNS. This technique involves stimulating the vagus nerve. Doesn't mean a device per se, but it can also mean a device. The vagus nerve is a very long cranial nerve that connects the brain to many vital organs throughout the body, and we'll explore the evidence supporting the role of the vagus nerve in mood regulation and emotions, and the connection between a healthy vagus nerve and a healthy gut microbiome. You know, people have gut dysbiosis tend to be depressed. They have brain inflammation. Yes, exactly, Joanne. It is an epidemic along with anxiety issues. More and more today. And we'll look at some techniques to activate and tone the vagus nerve and the power of crowding out, a technique of crowding out depressive thoughts with empowering ones. We're going to mention that because we don't want to just leave you unserved. We want to get you some help right now. If this is an area of struggle, this video could give you some real hardcore solutions. So I'm very excited to be able to address this because my sister got depressed and you guys know how that worked out. So let's talk about vagus nerve and its connection to mood regulation. This is really important. So research has shown that the vagus nerve plays a crucial role in maintaining emotional well-being. It serves as a communication pathway between the brain and various organs. It's the gut-vagus-brain axis, okay? So the vagus nerve controls the heart, the lungs, the digestive system, and many other things. By stimulating the vagus nerve, we can potentially influence our mood and emotions positively. I've had some pretty profound experiences with stimulating my own vagus nerve with ultrasound that gave me incredible, like uplifting emotional feelings. And it was really just from the stimulation of the vagus nerve. And I was like, how is that possible? And so it took me a lot of research to be like, wow, the vagus nerve literally does play a role in regulating emotions. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, I know. So sad, Joanne. Yes, my sister, she did pass away from depression. So this is an important subject to talk about. Depression can lead to worse things, and so hopefully we can lead it to maybe better things, right? And so several studies have indicated that electrical, ultrasound, or even magnetic stimulation of the brain or the vagus nerve can alleviate depression symptoms and improve overall mental health. So it doesn't matter what stage you're in your health, you don't have to be depressed to benefit from vagus nerve stimulation. But if you have depression, vagus nerve stimulation should absolutely be attempted. So let's talk about a little bit of continuation from yesterday's subject, which is maintaining a healthy vagus nerve and a healthy gut microbiome. This is really important because one of the things that's going to keep you depressed longer and longer and longer is not managing the gut microbiome. So gut health, what you eat, People can make themselves really depressed by eating really high sugary foods. So if you're loading yourself with sugar-laden, processed, ultra-processed foods, you are maximizing your risk for depression. So maybe you could consider cutting out a lot of sugar that feeds the bad bacteria in your gut, that puts bad forces on your vagus nerve. You don't want that. Yeah, a healthy vagus nerve is tied to a healthy gut microbiome. The gut microbiome does typically refer to the trillions of microorganisms that reside inside of your digestive tract, which significantly impact your physical and mental well-being. Research suggests that an imbalance in the gut microbiome can contribute to depression and other mental health disorders. This is like a well-established thing at this point in time. So by keeping the vagus nerve stimulated and active, you can create the microenvironment where the healthy, good microbiome, good gut bacteria survive, and the bad bacteria actually die. So it's not really a matter of your gut dysbiosis creates bad vagus nerve tone. It's that a bad vagus nerve tone creates and fosters an environment for the bad bacteria to grow, because your vagus nerve controls your immune system. If your vagus nerve isn't regulating your immunity, how are you going to kill the bad bacteria? You can't. So it's really a vagus nerve issues come first, and then gut dysbiosis comes second to that. Okay, that's really important. So, it is related to depression. You'll probably develop depression from an unhealthy vagus nerve before you develop gut dysbiosis. Okay, by keeping the vagus nerve stimulated and active and toned, we can promote a healthy gut microbiome and potentially improve our mood. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So let's talk about some techniques to tone the vagus nerve. So how do we keep it stimulated? How do we keep the vagus nerve active to create that microenvironment for a healthy vagus nerve? So activating and toning the vagus nerve can be complicated, but it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be very easy. So there are some simple things you can do, like humming or singing karaoke, that can actually stimulate the vagus nerve and encourage its functionality. Additionally, engaging in social activities and being more socially connected has been shown to enhance vagus nerve activity. So consider participating in group activities with other people or spending quality time with loved ones. That can make all the difference. You know, I certainly know that whenever I get to see my family, when my mom visits, when I visit my mom, I feel happier, right? There's something that is very powerful about spending time with family, with friends, with loved ones. Also, that time I spent in San Diego is with people I've known for like over a decade in a professional capacity. And it's really fun to see those people. Yeah, exactly, Joanne. Cold exposure works fantastic. If you guys have any suggestions, because you guys know these videos do get rewatched hundreds of times. So if you're watching this live right now or watching the replay, can you share in the chat what are some things that you found help tone your vagus nerve? Put those in the chat now, and I'll read those a little bit later. So this kind of stuff is definitely possible. It's definitely a manageable condition. So let's talk about this other concept, right? So not specifically a vagus nerve exercise, but a really good method for dealing with depression. And that's called crowding out depressive thoughts. Okay. So what this means is creating thoughts in your mind, engaging in thinking, engaging in ideas of empowering vibrational energies of things. Okay. So that means thinking about things that are either neutral or hobbies or enlightening things or interesting things that don't give room or space to the depression. Because the thing is, our brains are not designed to forget things easily. There's no incentive for your brain to just forget stuff, right? We even have a condition, there's a diagnosis that's a potentially fatal diagnosis for when someone starts to lose their memory. It's called dementia, and it's also goes by the name Alzheimer's disease. You do not want to be good at forgetting things. So if you think for a moment that you're going to forget the things that are depressing you, it's not going to happen. That's a disorder of the vagus nerve, in fact. So what you really want to do is give your brain something else to chew on besides the depressive thoughts, besides the thing that gives you anxiety. So, vagus nerve too can be a healthy tool along this journey, in that when you stimulate your vagus nerve, it gives you more mental capacity to think in broader terms, to think more healthily, to engage in more positive or more empowered thinking, to reframe the situation. It's like you have more flexibility with your thinking when your vagus nerve is healthy versus when your vagus nerve is really compromised. It's really difficult to alter the train of thought. So if you want to do this crowding out depressive thoughts, adding vagus nerve stimulation can be really, really good. I've spoken about this a few times, but some of the biggest investors in vagus nerve stimulation is from the United States military, because they recognize that their soldiers are literally the most at risk for anxiety, depression, and PTSD. So they want to do everything in their power to really mitigate the effects of the stress that they're under. So the military is funding vagus nerve stimulation to better use it on their soldiers so they can be happier and more fluid. Okay? So should you be one of those who is struggling with a depressive journey, then I really want you to consider looking into the wealth of evidence that supports the effectiveness of vagus nerve stimulation in the treatment of depression. Vagus nerve stimulation is an FDA-approved treatment for depression. When people have again, if you get that kind of a certification from the FDA, that means you had to go through rigorous multi-phase trials to determine if that's true. And vagus nerve stimulation, what they found is that VNS is so effective that it's able to treat symptoms that can come from major depressive disorder. So some of you watching, I hope you're not MDD, major depressive disorder. Even if you're a low level of depression and you're like, oh, I don't know if this would work for me, just know that VNS is considered one of the top interventions for people who have tried every intervention that hasn't worked. That means they've tried 2 or more major pharmaceutical depression aids with no alleviation of their symptoms. And that vagus nerve stimulation is the next level up for treatment. Although if I had it my way, VNS would be the first order of treatment for someone who's developing depression. Absolutely. This stuff definitely works. So if you are struggling with this right now, then seriously, please consider adding vagus nerve stimulation into your own health journey. You might find that it helps a lot, actually. It's worked for many of the people that I've worked with, right? So in conclusion, just to summarize here, we do know that vagus nerve stimulation offers a promising avenue for individuals who are struggling with depression. By understanding the vital role of the vagus nerve in mood regulation and promoting a healthy gut microbiome, implementing techniques to stimulate the nerve, and combining that with crowding out depressive thoughts, which is really the only practical way to deal with depression, we can take steps towards a better mental state. If you are seeking alternative treatment options, discussing the potential benefits of VNS with your healthcare professional could be a valuable starting point. Remember, you have the power to choose empowering thoughts and actions. Depression does not have to be a default state for you, okay? There are other options. There are other ways to do it. So start your journey towards improved well-being today. Now, I will add a note, a little disclaimer here, is that, this is provided for educational purposes and should not replace professional medical advice or treatment. As I said, please consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making any decisions regarding your mental health, okay? This kind of stuff is fantastic. I love it. But, again, if you're going to incorporate a medical treatment for a medical diagnosis, you should do it under the strict supervision of a professional. It is absolutely possible that some of the things that people are doing for VNS can kick them back a few years in their treatment journey. There's no guarantee of forward momentum if you aren't careful. There's never any guarantee of anything in anything. But there, again, statistically speaking, let's just take benzodiazepines. Let's take Xanax, for instance, right now, okay? So this is past the conclusion. We're just going on a riff here, and I will get to Joanne's comment. But let's take Xanax, for instance. Is Xanax an effective first-line treatment for depression and anxiety? Yes. I would say yes. It seems to help people who are depressed. So it does increase quality of life, but for a time. So we have to keep that in mind. What are the costs that you're invoking by choosing Xanax, a pill, a benzodiazepine, for managing anxiety and depression? Well, given where I'm positioned here and the conversations that I've had to have, the really unfortunate conversations that I've had to have with patients, with clients, with colleagues, with members of the Facebook group over the phone and over the years, is that the long-term repercussions of Xanax is horrifying. Like, people who've been on Xanax for 3 years and then try to quit it cold turkey typically get things like brain zaps or like severe mental cognitive defects, basically. Like, your entire brain gets miswired in a really terrible way. So you got to be really careful. Yeah, Joanne, exactly. The withdrawals from benzos are horrendous. So you have to keep these things in mind when selecting treatments. Don't think of it as, I'm starting this today to get some momentary relief. You do have to consider the long-term implications of this. Just because something is immediately effective from day one does not guarantee that you'll be free from symptoms in the future of even the treatment itself. So you got to be really careful. This is why I tend to distrust anything that on the very first usage makes you feel good. In fact, I intentionally try to select treatments that don't particularly give you like an instantaneous effect, because we see that with opioids as well. Opiate medication certainly can reduce pain, but it's highly addictive. And the withdrawal from opioids is pretty nasty. So there are lots of things you can do for vagus nerve stimulation. There's electrical, there's magnetic, there's ultrasound. Only some of those can provide like an instantaneous, like, oh, whoa, okay, yeah, now I feel it. Whoa, oh, goodness. Nicotine can do the same thing. If you smoke a vape pen or smoke a cigar or smoke a cigarette, that provides an instantaneous effect. But we also know the long-term downsides of something that's instantaneous. There's not many things that provide that much of an instantaneous chemical or electrochemical release that tends to have a good effect long-term. So, again, consider this when selecting options for treatment. Be very careful. It's an interesting thing that happens with electrical stimulation, especially. I want to focus on electrical stimulation. So electrical stimulation is very lucky because there are 2 types of electrical stimulation that never get separated in the marketing. When a doctor says, when a neuroscience professional, a practicing physician, speaks about vagus nerve stimulation, they are talking usually about electrical vagus nerve stimulation. And they're specifically talking about surgically implanted vagus nerve stimulators that provide an electrical cuff that vibrate, that zap electrically the vagus nerve every single day, all the time. And there are good benefits from that. And there can be immediate benefits from that. But these devices are permanent. They're people who get an implant of an electrical stimulator can get fast relief, but that's a lifetime commitment. There is no end date for electrical stimulation. Okay? Just like there really is no end date for benzodiazepines. That's pleasant. So that's something to consider. We really don't have a lot of data on what a year of, or 2 or 3 or a decade's worth of electrically stimulating the vagus nerve in the neck, what the implications are further than that. We really just don't have the data. And typically it just means that you're going to stimulate your vagus nerve every single day forever to maintain the advantages that you're getting from that through electrical stimulation. So these are some really important things to consider, right? In the initial days of Xanax, in the first 6 months of Xanax usage, people are like, wow, this is really cool. This is working. But now we have 20, 30, 40 years of data, and we know that it's not good. And I would warn people against benzodiazepines, right? Benzos are horrible. They're horrendous. So consumer electrical VNS is not like, again, it's not been validated in this consumer sense. So anything that provides an immediate release should be looked at with some hesitancy, I think. Yeah, Joanne, you're right. Exactly. People do desire quick fixes, and they don't consider the long-term implications. As a therapist, I see this all the time. Absolutely. It's really hard when you're in pain to forego a treatment that could promise instant relief. It's really hard to say no to that. And I think that's where a lot of physicians or therapists or psychiatric people kind of have an unfair advantage, so to speak, when recommending Xanax to clients or antidepressants, because they're in pain and they need help right now. And again, just be very careful. This kind of stuff needs to be taken with this is real medical technology. And just as there's as many good responses to some of these quick fixes, there's probably just as many negative effects from it too. So I strongly urge people is, unless you're a therapist yourself, you should have the help of somebody that can oversee your care. Just because you can get a credit card and buy a VNS device online, doesn't mean that you do really understand the full implications and what's coming in your body should you start this. So you got to be really, really careful. But again, if I could go back and give my sister a VNS device, I absolutely would have. Totally. I would have given her an ultrasound device too, actually. Funny thing was she had a degree as an ultrasound technician. So she was using ultrasound all the time back in 2013. And we were doing brain stimulation. We weren't doing ultrasound stimulation of the vagus nerve then. If I had known, I would have been like, Sister Carrie, take that ultrasound probe, put it right against your neck, hold it there for 5 minutes. It's going to start scanning your vagus nerve and stimulating with ultrasound. I guarantee she would have felt so much better. She would have made it through that time easily. 100%. 100%. It's just too bad. She had ultrasound. I just didn't know. 2013, I just didn't know. And so here we are, again. That's what happens. I can only imagine being alive 100 years ago and seeing a loved one die from an illness. And then in your lifetime, maybe 5 years later, finding that gosh, some medicine could have helped them, You definitely wish you could go back in time. You wish you could change things, but that's just the way it is, right? Why didn't things come out sooner? Ultrasound's been around since the 1920s. Ultrasound's been around for a long time. The technology to do what we do today has been around since the 1950s and 60s. Like, so, I mean, again, this development stuff, it's very slow. It takes time. But I'm really fortunate, and I'm really happy that through social media, we can broaden that message and get it to people in a much more timely fashion, right? You can just get direct access to this information right now. So yeah. So anyway, please, if you have depression, don't take any rash action. Don't do anything that you would regret or that would really seriously hurt or damage those around you. It's just, man, the implications post depression, if you take that action, that particular action, is just horrible for the people who are left over. The people who are left behind from that are touched in a just such a sad way. It zaps the life out of so much for people. So, and maybe that's part of the point. Is that they think, well, if I'm in so much pain, I'm going to make other people feel my pain too. And yeah, mission success, I would say, for sure. Just the level of grieving and guilt and ickiness and anxiety from that is just horrible. It's just horrible. But yet, we go on, we forge ahead, we continue to live, and we do what we do on a daily basis to get through that. So yeah, again, if depression is a struggle for you, there are really good solutions out there. VNS is a fantastic option to turn things around. That was my experience with ultrasound. Ultrasound on my vagus nerve literally turned things around in 2017 for me in ways I didn't even think were possible. It was just like, wow, that made a difference. So yeah, that's why I'm a dogged advocate for VNS. I see how it works. I see how it helps people in a slow and steady way without the side effects of these benzodiazepine type of interventions. If somebody put me on benzodiazepines in 2017, just being, just kind of little dreary, a little down, just not in the right headspace in 2017. And I just ventured to try VNS with ultrasound just one time. And it turned things around for me so fast. Like, it wasn't like 100% difference, but it was like, wow, okay. It started changing the directionality of my thinking really well. And then I continued to do it on a consistent basis. And the more I did it, the more it changed things. And it was building like an avalanche, like a snowball effect. It just kept building and building and building the more I did it. And it wasn't 6 months later till I launched a trial. And then a year after that, started this here Facebook group. This exact Facebook group is a result of that just singular time of stimulating my vagus nerve. So pretty significant stuff. But anyway, that's what I want to say on the subject. Thank you guys so much for watching. I want to go back to Joanne's comment here real quick before we wrap it up on YouTube as well, because she had a great list of things that have helped her. She wrote VNS electrical stimulation, I believe with the WHO list, singing, cold showers, hard gargling, socializing, humming, exercising, walking nightly. Very good. So yeah, definitely like cold exposure can be fantastic, phenomenal for getting your vagus nerve to work. Highly recommend it. Like Wim Hof, the Wim Hof method, his program was fantastic. I don't know if they've upgraded it since then. But I think I bought the Wim Hof program in like 2016 and just went hardcore with it. It is really good. So can't speak highly enough of that program. So anyway, but awesome. Yay. Such awesome learning. Yay. Always good to touch on the important stuff. Thanks, YouTube. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And on Facebook,